So again, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining the Building Healthy Habits webinar. In terms of building healthy habits, any time is a good time to begin, right? I think I was just thinking about this, especially this timing, and I was just thinking that any time for me, which does not involve postponing starting a good habit, is a good plan, period, right? Um, However, with that being said, I think we can all agree that during the New Year's time, there seems to be something in the air. There is this new hope, excitement, energy, and it's just in the air. It's like a collective consciousness, and it's really great to capitalize on these certain moments where we are all more motivated. We are all more eager to start anew. And so New Year, with its association with new hopes and renewed enthusiasm, is a especially conducive time to start. So, we all think regarding habits that all of us want to develop healthy habits. So there is no question about not having the intent or the motivation. But still, if you look back in your own life journey, there are some times when you wanted to do something and you were able to do it successfully. Whereas some other habits, no matter how much you tried, somehow they just didn't stick. You started and went off track again. So it's very interesting as to why some people are able to really get their goals and why others are not able to, why we also perform differently. And so that is where this webinar comes into picture. It is going to explore the science behind successful habit building, and especially what it is that ensures that some habit increases the chances of sticking around while others fall. So next slide, please. So for those, most of you, I believe, are aware of WorkWell, but for those who are very new, a very quick overview. WorkWell NYC is New York City's free wellness program covering various areas. The goal is to encourage city staff to move more, eat well, take action, be well, and raise health equity awareness. So if you don't look out for our newsletters with the upcoming events, and if you don't get our newsletter, be sure to subscribe. Next slide, please. So our session today was developed in partnership with Change Impact. It's a consultancy that supports equity initiatives across New York City. WorkWell NYC has collaborated with the Change Impact team before, and we are very excited to partner with them again in development of this excellent webinar. So on that note, I'm going to pass on to Daniel. Please introduce yourself and take us on.
Sounds great. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Danielle Damari. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Change Impact. I have been with Change Impact for about 4 years, and prior to that time, for about 15 years, I've worked on numerous education and social justice projects, many different capacities. And during that time, I spent about 5 years at the Department of Education. So I have an insider view of just how meaningful and rewarding it can be to work for local government. And I'm just so happy to be here with you all today. I'm so grateful that you joined me to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is healthy habits. But I first want to make sure to let you know that I have a colleague on the webinar with us, a lovely Ali Wittenberg. She will be our moderator today. If you happen to have any tech challenges or questions, you're welcome to message her privately. She will also lift up some information from the chat in case I'm missing it. So she'll just be around for just general support. So keeping that in mind. And I also want to remember to tell you that we do have closed captions available. So if that's useful for you, please enable that on Zoom. And Ali could also help you out if you need some support there with that. So let me make sure I talked about all the housekeeping stuff. Yes, I did. Great. We're going to move on into our agenda. So we'll start up with a warm-up. And I should say also, if you haven't already and you're inspired, please introduce yourself in the chat so you know who's in the room. You can just say your name and what organization you're with. As much as we could in the webinar style, we'd love to promote as much interaction as possible. This way it's even more meaningful for you all and you get to unite around the shared topic. So we will do a warm-up where people will be participating in an online poll together, and we'll hear from you a little bit about what you're thinking on regarding healthy habits. Then part one will be a deep dive into what actually is a habit, just revisit the definition and revisit why it's so important in our lives. Part two will dive into the actual science of habit formation. As Sammuthi was saying, sometimes we just don't understand why some habits are clicking and others aren't. And I hope that that section will give you some enlightenment as to, how to make it work for yourself. Part three will be just some tips for implementation, and we'll wrap up with part four, which will be resources, tips, and evaluation. It's wonderful to see so many people introducing themselves in the chat. That's fantastic. And I think a gentleman named Alexander had mentioned that it's the Lunar New Year tomorrow. So we also have our annual New Year as well as the Lunar New Year to build off of that momentum for healthy habits. So we always like to start off our webinars and our workshops with community agreements. And I want to encourage you all, as Sammuthi had said in the beginning, be present and engaged as much as you can. Close all your other devices and distractions. That will be best for your learning as much as possible. Pump up your listening or sharing. We love interaction as well as the colleagues on the call. It's so much more meaningful when there's more voices. So please offer your notes and questions on the chat. And when we have time, you're welcome to come off mute and ask questions too. The slides and resources will indeed be shared with you all. So, you don't have to worry about copiously taking notes, although I'm a note taker and that's how I learn. So if that works for you, go for it and come as you are and take what you need. Okay, I love inspiring quotes, so I'm going to kick off with this one, which I learned something new in learning this quote for this workshop, which is, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." And all my life, I thought Aristotle said it, but it turns out it's a gentleman named Will Durant, and he was paraphrasing Aristotle. But I just love this quote. I've always loved it. Is that excellence is nothing more than a habit. And what I would love to hear is, what are you building on already? For sure, you've already got some positive habits. So what we're going to do now is we're going to participate in a Menti. If you have not participated in a Menti before, it's pretty easy. There's a few different ways you can participate to answer this one question, which is, what is one positive habit you already have that helps you thrive? So to answer that, you could either pick up your phone and scan the QR code, or you're welcome to go to menti.com and use the code here. And Allie has already popped everything into the chat here, so you can just also click on the link if that's the easiest thing you'll do. And hopefully some folks have already started filling it out. We're going to click over here. That's great. I see some participation just to build on, like I said, all the wonderful habits that you're already practicing. So we've got drinking a cup of water as soon as I wake up, journaling, really good for your mental health habits. Another great mental health habit, limited time for social media. Ooh, I don't know if anybody caught me doing some dance moves in the beginning, but dancing is a good habit. Dance classes on Saturdays. That's great. I promise we won't read all of these because we'll take the whole workshop, but we'll just pick a few. Yoga, sleep hygiene, such an important one. Sleep is just the foundation for everything. Prayer for anybody that's spiritual, has some spirit habits is how I like to think of them. A daily green drink for our body habits, our nutrition habits, taking supplements. I stay on task with an ongoing weekly work project. So really being focused. I exercise at least 5 times per week doing various activities. I like how detailed that habit is. We're going to kind of come back to how we craft our habits, and the more detailed we make them, the better. I also see some coming in the chat here. Some people are talking about meditation, more journalers. That's great. We have a few meditators on the call. That's wonderful. Checking in with your personal health, taking strolls, the beauty of walking. Keeping up with my family's daily lives. I've read many times that towards the end of our lives, it's really the people around us that keep us the healthiest, and creating that community around us. So this is beautiful. I say greetings to people in passing, and just even if you don't know people, or I say I love you to my husband and kids every day. That's beautiful. Those are the love language habits, right? I like this one. I really resonate. Prayer, limiting social media, sleep, and moving my body. Alrighty. Well, it seems like we've got a good gang here of folks who are already practicing healthy habits, and we're going to see how we can build on those strengths in this workshop. I'm going to head back over. Thank you for participating. Forgive me, I'm noticing that the QR code went by fast, but you're welcome to add your notes to the link there that Ali just popped in. And what we'll do is when you get this slide deck, we'll pop these habits in there so that you can continue to learn from your colleagues here. Okay, so we are going to dive in now to what is a habit and why is it so important. So forgive me, I know everybody knows the definition of a habit, but let's just start from the top. So a usual way of behaving, something that a person does often in a regular and a repeated way. And once it forms, a habit typically requires little to no conscious thought or effort to perform. And that's the part that I really want to emphasize is a habit is something that's automatic, it's consistent, and what makes it really beautiful is that once it really clicks as a habit, it becomes effortless. Now, the difference between a habit and a practice is a practice, like one of my fun facts about me is I'm always trying to learn how to play the ukulele. And I have to practice. I have to really set an alarm. It's very deliberate, it's very intentional, and it takes a lot of effort. I can't just, I don't have a habit where when I'm done with work, I just pick it up. I gotta put it in the calendar. I gotta make sure I get there. And it's kind of hurts my fingers a little bit, but it's my effort. So that's my practice. Different would be, if I had grown up playing the ukulele and it was just easy for me, I would just have a habit of just picking it up and just strumming it without even thinking about it. And I think that's a really really important distinction is in the beginning, something is a practice and you're practicing it. And then all of a sudden it just becomes a habit. And when things are effortless, everything just becomes so much easier. And so why are our habits so important? So many different reasons, right? Helps us think clearer when we focus on those mental health habits or focusing habits, ways to minimize all the age of distraction, right? Improve relationships. Those people who said that they greet people, just on the street to say hello, or making sure that they use their words to express their love or care for their family or loved ones. Obviously, that will be good for your relationships. Your vitality with all your nutrition and exercise habits, community engagement, improved mental health, emotional balance, can give you lots more energy, particularly if you're managing your sleep habits well, or your resting habits and your boundary habits. It could help you with your career if you've got some great professional habits. Gives you good self-care, allows you to take breaks, setting boundaries. It's very important to make a habit of saying no when it's necessary. So that's really good in setting your boundaries, which as most of us know is key to keeping our balance, and improved daily living, extended lifespan. So just a few reasons, but ultimately, I love this sentiment, manage your habits or your habits will manage you, right? And I also like to think about that in terms of specific habits. Manage my money habits, or my money habits are definitely going to manage me. Manage my social media, or social media will be managing me, right? So just so important to be thinking about managing your habits and being really intentional about it so that they don't end up managing you. I really wanted to know who said this because I've held on to this quote for a long time, so I couldn't find exactly who said it. However, I did come across a social justice advocate who we may all be familiar with, who had a little pep talk to say about this. So I'm gonna play the video now.
Manage your habits. Don't let
a little video, so just bear with me here.
Don't let your habits manage you. Many of us do things more by habit than thought. Bad habits lead to bad results. You must stop at everything you do and say, why am I doing this? And break bad habits. Bad habits of eating, bad habits of time management, bad habits of reading the wrong stuff, bad habits of engaging toxic thinking people. Break bad habits. You can't be enlightened and have bad habits. You can't be progressive with regressive habits. Manage your habits. It has a lot to do with how far you go on your journey and the fulfillment of your purpose. Self realization requires habit management.
I just love that. I was like, wow, he knew we were doing this webinar and prepared that pep talk for us. Thank you, Reverend Al Sharpton. It was just so powerful what I got out of that, and I hope you got something out of that too. I'm going to talk about what some of our healthy habits are. These were pulled from the app Calm.com. If you're not familiar with it, Calm, C-A-L-M, and you're all familiar with them, right? We often know our healthy habits, and it's like, well, how do we turnkey them into action? That's going to be part 2. Part 1 right now, we're just going to do a refresher on what they are. So eating nourishing foods, stay hydrated, spend time in nature, exercise regularly, limit screen time, taking micro breaks, getting sufficient sleep, socializing with friends and family, and practicing gratitude. So these are all evidence-based habits. These are, research-based and really proven to improve your quality of life. And one of the habits that not necessarily on here, but I want to make sure to say out loud is our thinking habits, right? Sometimes I even try to remind myself, like, are my emotions sometimes, am I in the habit of feeling a certain way? But for sure, my thinking habits are really important. So I really try to make a habit of being aware of my thoughts, right? So that's like making mindfulness a habit so that I can pick and choose. Oh, I don't need to believe every thought in my head, right? So getting really internal with it. And we'll, at the end of the workshop, talk about why it's so important to make a habit of checking in with your thinking habits. What else do I want to say about this section? I want to say that it's just really important to be aware of these habits. And I've created 2 little metaphors for you to think about the importance of habits, because they're a little bit invisible, but they're just so important. So habits are like the roots of a tree. They're hidden underground, but they anchor the tree, they nourish it, and they determine how tall and strong it grows. I love this metaphor, really easy to understand. If you're more of a techie person and computers and operating system are the way that you think, here's another metaphor for you. Habits are the operating system of your life. They run quietly in the background, determining how efficiently and effectively you perform tasks. So I'm just catching a few of the questions. It's great to see the chat so busy. Yay for being engaged. And I saw, some questions of like, but how do I do a reset, right? So it's kind of like we got to reboot the computer a little bit of our minds and our habits. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So I'm going to just summarize this first section, which are the attributes of a powerful habit are that they are automatic, consistent, and effortless, right? Like think about that cup of coffee in the morning if you're a coffee drinker or a tea drinker. Is that effortless? Are you thinking about it? No, that's part of your habit, right? I have a habit of I just call my family on Sundays. I just don't think about it. It's just effortless, right? So that's what we always want to get to, where it doesn't create so much effort for us. You want to manage your habits, or your habits will manage you. And healthy habits can include nutritious choices for our body, how we spend our free time, or how we perceive ourselves and the world. Our mindsets could be a habit. Let me pause there and see if there's any burning questions. Like I mentioned, I see a lot going on in the chat, and I just want to say thanks to Ellie for moderating all this great conversation. Any questions so far on what we've shared that we want to pause before we go on to part 2?
Danielle, I just want to lift up Molly had a great point in the chat, which I think is a live wondering that they're having, and really brings up the nuances of any content that is presented and kind of generalized. So the idea of habits being effortless, and obviously maybe that's a goal, that it becomes ingrained in our thinking and our behaviors, and wondering if that's true across all neurotypes and of course all different personalities. And just like any topic, there's a million nuances and layers, and everybody's personal experience is different. So not really a question to you, but kind of just naming that in any of the research or in any of these tips and insights, obviously these are general ideas, and hopefully they work in some capacity for everyone. But it may be also true that not everybody experiences habit development and sustainability the same way. So just wanted to shout out Molly for that, and if you have any thoughts to add.
Thank you. Thank you so much for naming that. Yes, I mean, as our human experiences are so unique and diverse, everybody's relationship with habits will be really different. I've tried to make it a habit to focus on intentional habits so that when I try new habits, I'm like, okay, I know how to approach this. For me, in my experience, typically my new habit formation or my breaking of bad habits isn't always easy, to be very, very frank. Sometimes it is. It kind of depends on all the ingredients around me, and I'll share a little bit more to that. But let me be more clear in saying that when we're initiating new habits, they're rarely effortless in the beginning. They do take a lot of intentional effort and deliberate practice until they become the habit. So really good question and good distinction. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to move us on. Okay, so here we go into the science of habit formation. So we were just taking a peek at the section here. It's like, yes, we know all this stuff. We know all this stuff, but how do I get it to click? So what I'm about to share now in the science of habit formation is like a really brief overview of 3 different approaches to habit formation. And we're going to do that by looking at 3 best-selling books on habits. I've read them all. I think they're all terrific. And this is a real snapshot of each one of them. So the first is called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And what Charles explains is that there's 3 phases to a habit. First, what starts the habit is a cue. This is what triggers your habit, or it's the call to action. It could just be something like waking up. It could be something like flipping the switch when you get home. Like, what do you do right after you flip that switch? The next is the routine itself. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm a tea drinker, so I make a cup of tea for myself. And then the reward, I feel a sense of calm. I feel a sense of caffeination because I have matcha, right? So what Charles says is that when we want to break a bad habit, we need to keep the cue the same typically and the reward the same, but we have to replace the routine. I wasn't always a matcha tea drinker. My family is Italian American, and we drink a lot of coffee in our home at all hours of the day. And so my cue was wake up in the morning, I'm tired. Routine is coffee. Reward is I'm awake. And the same routine would happen at about 3 p.m. And anybody else who suffers from the 3 p.m. slump knows, right? You need a little caffeine if you're a caffeine person. I basically just kind of kept it all the same, but I replaced the coffee with a matcha tea. So a lot is just figuring out what could give you a similar reward and still build off the same cue, but you could replace the routine, the habit itself. The next book that we're going to look at is called Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. BJ Fogg has spoken about the 3 key ingredients in a habit, which are motivation, ability, and prompt. I'm catching little slivers of the chat while I'm presenting, and I noticed somebody saying, yeah, it's easier for me to start a new habit when I'm in a better mood. Because when we're in a good mood, we might be more motivated. We're more upbeat. Kind of need to feel that motivation, and you need to have a sense of ability to do the thing, and then there needs to be a prompt. So let me say, so this is a kind of a chart that shows that, and I'm just going to explain it here in this box, which is the easier something is to do and the higher your motivation is, the more likely you are to act. When a behavior does not occur, at least one of these elements is missing. So let me give you an example here about a goal that I had, which was to run more. I wanted to be more of a runner. I do have the ability to run, but sometimes when I wake up in the morning, my body is like questionable about that. Do you have that ability? I'm not sure. But just by putting the sneakers right by the front door increases my ability. It makes it even easier for me to do it. And I actually go beyond that. I put the sneakers plus my shorts, and my shirt, or whatever my running clothes are, and I just get it all ready to go so that it's easier for me to do it. It also kind of serves as a prompt because I see it there and it's sort of whispering to me like it's time to go for that run, right? So if you're struggling getting one of your habits to kick into gear, you want to reflect and ask yourself, do I have the right motivation? Like, am I really motivated for this? How can I make this easier for myself? And what's my prompt? And for the easier, so the tiny habits, let me bring it back to the title, is all about how to make it so small that it's easy to do as frequently as possible. So instead of signing myself up for a half an hour run every day, I might just promise myself that I could run even as short as 5 minutes. If I could just get out there and run for 5 minutes a day and keep my consistency, the more likely I am for this to evolve into a habit. The next book, as I see somebody noted here, is in the chat here, is Atomic Habits. And this is by James Clear. I did happen to prefer this book the most. It's just a wonderful, powerful book. And what James Clear talks about is this concept of identity-based habits. And so there's kind of 3 tiers to the habit, which are your outcomes, your processes, and your identity. Let me just read this little subtitle here, which is your tiny changes equals remarkable results. And that's really the thesis of his book. I think this book has sold something like 20 million copies already. It's a highly popular, and I really recommend it. I mean, I recommend all the books across the board. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through this process 3 times, because I want to make sure that we all understand all the distinctions between outcomes, processes, and the identity. So just wanted to let you know in advance so that you can follow me well here. So we got outcomes, which is all about changing your results, your processes, which is the habit itself, and identity, which is changing your beliefs. And so your outcomes are what you get, your processes are what you do, and your identity is what you believe. Now, often people will be focusing on your outcomes, okay? They focus on what they want to achieve. So I brought up running earlier. So some people might say, I really want to run in that marathon. That's what it's all about for me, the marathon. But what they really want to be focusing on is identity. The alternative is focusing on who you want to become instead. And that really helps create a little bit of a mindset shift for yourself, so that your actions and your choices can be in alignment with what your identity goal is and not necessarily your outcome goal. So in that example, like, I want to be someone who runs every day, instead of focusing on the big goal, right? So it's making sure you have the internal identity set first. So we're going to go through this again to make sure that we understand it. So one example that I'm going to run through here is about meditating. So one of my outcomes is I want to meditate more, kind of a loose outcome. What is more? How much is more, right? But first, now we got to drill down. So the process is at 7 a.m., I meditate in my living room. That's the system, that's the routine. The identity is I'm someone who is mindful. I'm a mindful person. And the more I can work with that identity and keep saying it to myself and reminding myself that, the easier it's going to be to wake up at 7 a.m. and meditate in my living room. Now, one of the things that James Clear talks about in the book is that people get so focused on the outcomes, but what's more important is not only the identity, but also the process. So even if you can't do that long run, if you can't do that long meditation, just showing up to do something consistently as much as possible every day, the outcome will take care of itself. So to really stay focused on who you want to become and the consistency of the process. And again, the outcome takes care of itself. So, okay, now I'm going to give you some tips on how to achieve each stage of that, right? Outcomes, process, identity. So first, we're going to look at your outcomes. So we're going to start with your goals. You want to use I would recommend using the SMART framework as your goal setting tool. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. S stands for strategic, measurable, ambitious or actionable, realistic, or time bound. Creating your goal as a SMART goal is just so important to be really specific on what you want to attain. Now, these other tips I've found to be really helpful, which I've learned about in coaching programs that I've participated in. So the first thing is personal. Make your goal personal. Use I in your statement. Sometimes people just forget that part. The second and the third tips are really important, and it's where I find a lot of people can use some growth areas, let's say, in crafting their goals. So it's positive. Make your goal positive. Focus on what you want and not what you don't want. So, for example, if one of your goals is to quit smoking, you wouldn't frame your goal, I want to quit smoking, because your brain doesn't hear the quit part. It just hears smoking. So what you would want to focus on are what you want. So your goal is, I want clear lungs. I want control over my breathing habits. I want, thinking about specifically when you smoke your cigarettes, is it with your morning coffee? I want to drink my coffee and take a few deep breaths. And so just, clean deep breaths. I can speak to that habit change, because I did eventually quit smoking, and I kept telling myself all these like, clear lungs. I would like meditate on clear lungs constantly, instead of focusing on quitting habits. And then also so important, and you could really feel this tangibly when you shift your words, is writing your goals as though they're already happening. So keep it in the present tense, not writing your goals in the future tense. And that's what most of us do. I will lose 10 pounds. I will quit smoking. I will start running. What happens when we use the future tense, or another one that we use a lot is, I want to have a green juice every day. I want to be meditating more. When we use those words will and want, it creates like a future tense in front of us, and it's almost like a carrot on a stick. And so linguistically and neurologically, what's happening is we can never catch up with it because it's always in front of us. I will eventually do that, eventually. Where you almost want to trick your brain into thinking, I already do this. So when you set your goals, set it in the present tense. Even better, some people set it in the past tense. They might say, by February 30th, I have ran a marathon, something like that. So because you're tricking your brain as if you already done it. Okay. So let's carry on to the process. I'm going to give you some tips about process. So process, which is changing your habits, comes down to the implementation intention. This practice, called the implementation intention, kind of a long term, we could shorten it. I'm going to give you a trick to shorten it. It doubles your chances for success. That's a huge statistic. There are hundreds upon hundreds of reports and studies, particularly in the health sector, around the power of implementation intentions. If you haven't researched it, just pop in implementation intention research, and you'll find hundreds of studies on it. So this is the big thing that I want everybody to walk away with, is this implementation intention, especially because double chances of success is pretty big influence. So here's the magic formula. It names a behavior, a time, and a location. And that's phase one. So part one is, I am doing XYZ at ABC time in XYZ location. That's why I wrote at 7 a.m. I'm going to meditate in my living room. Now, the next sentence is a if then statement. What that does, it creates a little safety net for you. If that doesn't happen, then I will do this. And having that two-tiered process really helps people, because life never goes according to plan, right? Let's go back to the quitting cigarettes. I would say to myself, I am going to enter the bar at 8 p.m. with my friends, and I am somebody who doesn't smoke anymore, so I will decline the cigarette. If my friend puts a little pressure on me, then I will take a step back and say, can you please honor my intention? Right? Like just coming up with that preparation, because again, life doesn't go according to plan. So here's a few examples. I do 10 push-ups every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. in my bedroom. If I'm too tired to do push-ups, then I'll do 10 jumping jacks instead. The next example is, I fill my water bottle at 9 a.m. in my office and take sips throughout the day. If I forget to drink throughout the day, then I'll make sure to finish my water bottle before I leave the office at the end of the day, just to make sure I'm getting my water in. Okay, we're on the last section here, which is changing your beliefs. This is all about your worldview, your self-image, your judgments, your biases, and your assumptions. So important. Our mindset is also a habit. So what James Clear suggests is, step one, decide the type of person you want to be, And two, prove it to yourself with small wins. And he says every time that we do that, we make a choice in the direction of our habits, we're putting a vote in for the type of person that we want to be. I just love that. And so some examples he shares is want to become a better writer. So the identity there is I want to become the type of person who writes 1,000 words every day. The small win is what's something I can do every day to make a vote for that in my life? Write 1 paragraph each day this week. Want to be a marathon runner? The identity here is I want to become someone who never misses a run. So the small win is each morning I go for at least a 5-minute run. So the trick here is the who part, I find, like become the type of person who does XYZ. Another example of this is if you have a desire to become a vegetarian. For some people that might be hard, or maybe there's a health challenge that you have and you know you're no longer allowed to eat particular foods. When you're looking at the menu, you know, then you just say to yourself, like, instead of, oh, I wish I could have that, like, no, I'm somebody who doesn't eat XYZ anymore. So that's an identity that I am. So I kind of almost don't even look at those things on the menu because I'm somebody who doesn't eat that. So it's starting with the identity instead of the outcome of whatever that reason is that you're not eating those foods. So I hope some of those tips help. I'm going to wrap up this section with a little quote here, which is, many people assume their identities are fixed, but in fact, your self-image is flexible. So thinking of yourself in a particular way is a habit, and habits can be changed for the better. So if you're listening to this workshop and you think, oh, I'm somebody who doesn't do well with habit formation, it just hasn't worked for me, that's something that can be changed, right? So that in and of itself is a habit of how you're thinking about yourself, which is why I personally believe our mindset habits are among the most important habits. So with that, I really appreciate everybody's attention, listening and chatting, but now I want you to try it out and put it into practice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the music back on. I'm going to set my handy dandy timer here. I'm going to give us 2 minutes. So we're going to have 2 minutes of quiet time. Well, sorry, it won't be totally quiet, but we'll put some music on. And I want you to take this phrase, this formula, and I want you to play with it and see what habit is most alive for you that you want to be focusing on, and indicate what time, what location, and what behavior you will be doing. And then the second part is the safety net. But if something takes me away from that, then here's what I'm going to do instead. So any big questions before we get started on that? I know Allie's going to pop the formula into the chat so if she hasn't already. And then we'll give you about 2 minutes to work on it. And you won't necessarily be sharing these unless you want to. So if it's personal for you. So do you have any advice on prioritizing what habits to set? Really good question, Molly. What the science says, and I know this might be tough for the ambitious types because it's tough for me, is one habit is what we want to focus on a time. We're much more effective at changing one habit at a time than multiple habits. And as far as which habit to prioritize, I wouldn't be able to answer that because it's so personal. Everybody has their own unique priorities in life. So I just say, you know, I like to feel things in my body. So try on those habits. Like, which one does your body saying, or your mind like, yes, let's focus on that habit. So maybe just ask yourself that question and see what comes alive for you. So with that, let me turn on any other questions before I give you those 2 minutes. Okay, I'm going to put the music back on, and we'll come back together and hear how that went. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see, I'll be the light to guide you. Find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2.
that's what friends are supposed to do. Oh yeah. Ooh, yeah. If you're tossing and you're turning and you just can't fall asleep, I'll sing a song beside you. And if you ever forget how much you really mean to me, every day I will remind you. Oh, find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there.
Somebody commented on how great the song is, thanks to Bruno Mars. Had a tough time turning it off there. How'd y'all do? Do you all want a little bit more time to work on that? Or did that give you enough time to come up with a habit of your own? All right, well, I see we had one. Nancy, thank you for sharing your habit. I appreciate that. I want to encourage anybody else who might be curious to get a little feedback or like live time response on your habit, or also just to inspire others. You know, and the more we see other people taking control and being intentional about their habits, the more motivated we are. So if you might be willing to be so bold and courageous, you know, pop your habit that you worked on in the chat, and you can get some, hopefully we might have a minute or two to respond to it. Nancy, I hope it's okay. I'm gonna just edit your thing just ever so slightly. And what you did is very common, is we use the will, right? So if I run 10 minutes Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, then I will run every day for 10 minutes next month. Sorry, the chat changed for me. I see. I'm not sure if that was the whole thing or not, but what I want to say is there's something a little, this is my feedback per se, so take it with a grain of salt, but there's something a little too future oriented about it. I want it to be a little bit more present. So let me just sit with it for a moment to see what recommendation I can make to support this. So I think what you're saying is if I hadn't done the run, then I will run every day for 10 minutes next month. So, okay. So what I would say is I run Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If I don't get those runs in, then I run every day for 10 minutes this week instead of next month. Next month is far. We don't know what's going to happen. And so I got rid of the will, and I said, I run Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and let's add a time in there at XYZ time. Even better, a prompt after work, after I wake up, when my friend comes over. If I don't get those runs in, I run 10 minutes every day this week, just to get it more present. Okay, I'm going to move on to a few others. And again, I appreciate everybody sharing. I'm taking that there's permission for me to read it out loud. So we've got one from Bonnie at 9:45 a.m. at Flock. I practice yoga at least once per week. If I get sick or travel, I find another opportunity to practice. That's great. That's great. I'd love to hone in on that another opportunity to get really specific. If I get sick or travel, I find 5 minutes before I go to bed to move my body or something. Or I make sure on Friday nights that if you're not a party person, you know, on a Friday night, or that's what I like to do with my runs. But just getting really specific on what the other opportunity is, because another opportunity right now is kind of general. But everything else was really great in that habit formation. I'm just going to read about 2 or 3 in the interest of time here. At 8 p.m., I lift weights for 30 minutes every day in my living room. That's great. Awesome. So Estelle, what I want to encourage you to do is think of a when then, like, or if that doesn't happen, like what happens next? If you get a phone call at 8 p.m. and you need to take it, like when are you going to do it next? Okay. I'm going to read one more. I'm just going to scroll a little bit further. Okay. Okay, here's one. I struggled with this one a lot. I will be in bed by Adrian. Thank you, Adrian. I will be in bed by 12:30 every night. If I am not in my bed, then I will sleep on the couch. Okay, I picked a hard one here. Okay, let me see how I can support with this one. There's two things here, which is the will, right? So we used will twice. It's so human nature for us to do it. So if you didn't share your goal, your habit, what I want to recommend is just reading what you wrote. And if you see the words want to or will, just try to exit out and read it aloud to yourself and see how different it feels. So Adrian, what I could recommend here for this one is at 12:30.
I wanted to know,
oh, please.
do you have the coffee shop open at all? Okay.
Okay. I think that's not meant for us. I'm not sure. Okay. Back to Adrian here. At 12:30 a.m. every night, I am in bed. If I am not in my bed, then I sleep on the couch. It works. I just would get rid of the will. It seems I need to know what your desired outcome is there. Is it about the sleep? Is it about like sleeping in the bed? If it's about the sleep, then I think that works fine. Okay, I want to read one more because it's coming out for me. I will eliminate Rowena, forgive me if I might be mispronouncing. I will eliminate eating junk food while at the office. I know I will crave, so I should be prepared. Me too, I have a sweet tooth. If I want one, then I'll bring or buy apples, oranges, or grapes to munch on instead. That's great. I love the replacement there. If it's okay, I'm just going to refine it ever so slightly. The thing that I want to change on here is that it mentions words that is what you don't want, which is eating junk food. So let's replace it with what we do want, and let's put it in the present tense. So instead of I will eliminate eating junk food, let's say I make healthy food choices while at the office, especially during 3 p.m. or whenever the time is that you reach for the cookies. That's when I reach for my cookies. So let me say that again. I make healthy food choices while in the office. If I get a temptation, then instead of then I bring or buy apples, oranges, or grapes. Did I hear any feedback or thoughts? Okay. I hope some of those live edits are helping those. I'm so sorry we don't have time to read them all. But if you have a burning desire for me to respond, just hang out after the webinar, and I'm happy to support anybody, because I absolutely love refining and fine-tuning habits. So I hope there was something gained there, listening to me just fine-tune a little bit there. Let me pause there. We've got just about 5 to 7 minutes left before we do the evaluation. Do we have any questions or wonderings about habits or anything that was shared so far?
I think, Danielle, a lot of people have been asking questions in real time, and either your slides have been responding, or I've been kind of responding, or the group has been supporting each other. So I think we can keep moving, just because some of these questions are going to be answered also with the resources you're sharing.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Okay. So part 2 summary. Excuse me. As we know from The Power of Habit, the habit includes 3 stages: the cue, the reward, the routine. Moving on to the Fogg behavior model, a habit includes 3 ingredients: motivation, ability, and a prompt. See how you can make your habits as small as possible, especially when you're getting them off the ground, to make them easier. On to the next bullet point: creating identity-based habits includes changing your beliefs, changing your processes in order to change your outcomes. And remember that those implementation intentions, otherwise thought of as when-then statements or if-then statements, double your chances of success. So write it out and put it in places that you'll see it and say it out loud to yourself. Okay, now we're going to go through the tips for implementation. First is, again, if you've noticed something about those 2 books, Tiny Habits and Atomic Habits, it's all thinking about as small as you can get. If again, those 5-minute runs, write for 5 minutes. Just figure out if you have a sweet tooth and all parts of the day you eat, maybe just focus on one meal a day in the beginning to make those healthier choices. Start small with the most realistic goals. That's so important. You have to do things that you can achieve in the beginning to build your confidence. Make it obvious. Design your environment to make cues for good habits visible and clear. So leave yourself visible reminders to do the habits that you're focused on. Focus on the system rather than the goal. Consistency is key, which leads to the next quote that I love. Repetition is the mother of skill. If you forget a day, no problem. Just repeat the next day and repeat the next day and repeat the next day so it's easier to stay on. When developing your goals and intentions, remember the habit itself, the time, the location, and the place. Those are what are key for those implementation intentions. And just my friendly reminder to keep it in the present tense. Okay, so what we're going to share with you now is the resource guide. Allie is going to pop into the chat this tiny URL. You could also scan the QR code. I'm going to come back to the QR code shortly, but I know the link will be in the chat. What we are sharing with you is something called an editable Google Doc. So when you click on the link, it will show like this, and you just click make a copy, and that's going to be your own editable copy of this guide. And when you open the guide, what you'll find is the list of the healthy habits that are research-based and evidence-based that we mentioned in the beginning.
Candy, whatever that is.
Somebody's talking about chocolate-covered strawberries, but we're talking about healthy habits here. And what we'll talk about here is also the guide. So the guide will give you an opportunity to think about your outcome using the SMART goals and the tips that we mentioned, as well as the implementation intention. And then what kind of person do you want to be? And what are the small wins you could do to achieve your new identity? And then these are all the links to the resources that we've shared today. Okay, back to the presentation. We're kind of closing in here. As I mentioned, I really love inspiring quotes. So you may have heard this one before. It's by Lao Tzu, which is, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. And this is why it's so important to be thoughtful of our thoughts and really make sure we're fine-tuning our thinking habits. So summary of this section is, please use that resource guide. It's super helpful in thinking through how to craft the perfect habit for yourself. Reminder that those implementation intentions include habit, time, location, and place. Forgive the repetition, but repetition is the mother of skill. And reminder to focus on your thoughts and words as they become your actions, habit, character, and destiny. And with that, we are on the closing section. So these resources are where we gathered most of our information. They are also in your guide. And we've got just a few minutes left for the evaluation. And I'm going to pass it back to Samari, and I think she will lead us through an evaluation. Maybe I could just pause there to see, we've got like 1 minute left for any questions or any thoughts. Anybody have any thoughts that you want to share? Well, I'm so glad many of you enjoyed this presentation. Like I said, I love talking about this topic, and just want to give a shout out to Allie for helping moderate the chat so well.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Ali. This is such a great presentation, and I saw the engagement, and I hope that everyone do look out to the wrap-up email. It's going to include the recording, the slides, and also all these resources with links. And I think it will be really helpful to hear this again or go through the slides again, and definitely make sure you make use of the implementation guide, because right now, as you know, we talked about before, the motivation is really high, but it really comes to implementing it and doing the processes and doing all that, which is going to make the difference between just starting out good and intention versus actually getting to building the habits. So we strongly encourage you to make use of that. So with that, I want to just quickly have a couple of polls. We want to hear from you as to how you like this session. So this is the first poll. Just quickly, you can just select from the screen. Thank you so much. So I'm closing this and starting the next one. And this is about, did participating in this program increase your knowledge of the health and wellness topic presented? And so while you're, filling this out, I just want to say also that in our wrap-up email, we have information about the upcoming event. Some of you are talking about sleep, and I mentioned there's a sleep webinar coming up in March, and there are also wonderful diet-related programs which are coming up. There's a campaign, Food is Medicine. So do look out for our upcoming events in the wrap-up email and sign up for those which you find interesting. So I'll ending the poll, and with this we are at, and I'm just going to close the recording and then we can continue. So thank you so much.